Well, hi, everyone. Thank you for coming this morning to our program. It's definitely one that's very timely with everyone being at home and watching TV. And if you're not watching TV, you're watching probably an iPad or a phone or something. And there's just so much content with the ability to watch things. So we thought this would be a very timely presentation about streaming TV and what that kind of means. If you can please make sure you mute yourself so that there's no disruption to our presenter. There will be time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. Feel free to take all your copious notes, and I will have my colleague Maria introduce our speaker, and then we'll get started.
Thank you, Aisha. Yeah, so hi, welcome to everyone. And thanks for joining us this morning for our Zoom presentation on getting started with streaming TV. We're fortunate to have with us Director and Humanities CIO at HumTech, Annelie Rugg. And she oversees the technology solutions and provides support for faculty, staff, and students in the UCLA Humanities. She earned her PhD from UCLA in Slavic languages, and she currently leads a staff of 20. And they support the staff and students with technology for instruction, research, and everyday work. Annelie says that she loves to see the light go off when people learn new things. So hopefully she will see a lot of lights today. So thank you for joining us. Annelie.
All right, great. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Aisha. And thank you all for coming today. Happy Monday. Happy way to go Bruins for those of you who are basketball fans, I guess, and Bruin fans. We're all Bruin fans. I'm really glad to be here. Maria's been trying to get me to do this for some time. So she persisted, and here I am, and I'm really pleased to have done this. So I am going to start with, I guess, some of what Maria already has shared, a little bit about me. So some of this you already know. And Humanities Technology is in the College of Letters and Science under the Dean of Humanities. And I report to the Dean's office. And I've been at HumTech, it will be 20 years in September. And then, my graduate program before that at UCLA. So I've been at UCLA for a long, long time. And very happy, and the work we do is always changing, and wonderful to work with the faculty and the staff, and all of you are one of those, so that's wonderful. I do have a daughter, one child. She's a freshman at Lawrence University, and happily she's actually on site. They are, of course, doing remote classes like everyone is, but we're very pleased that she's able to get some kind of college experience. I happen to moonlight as a club soccer referee on my free time on the weekends when I have it. And I also enjoy cycling, hiking, yoga, gardening, cooking, and kind of eco living. I like to try and lower my footprint, ecologically speaking. So today's topic is getting started with streaming TV. And I should probably preface this by saying, as I said a few minutes ago, I am not a cable guy, and I don't play one on TV. So funny enough, we don't actually support streaming TV in our regular work. So I sort of took this on as a bit of a research project for myself to kind of pull my understanding together. So I got to learn from this as well. And I'm probably just maybe a half or one step ahead of many of you, maybe even not that for some of you. Some of you may be more knowledgeable than I. So if there's an error here, I do apologize ahead of time, but I think I checked what I have here and it seems to be accurate. This is going to not be hands-on, so you're not going to need to be in front of a TV. We're not going to be showing you how to connect anything. This is really more kind of what's it all about, understanding how it works and the different options that you have available to you, and kind of how to boil it down, particularly for those of you who might just be feeling overwhelmed. And if you're kind of already midway or on your way or well into it, hopefully it'll fill in some gaps. So I don't want to make any assumptions here. Oh, and I guess with regard to questions, if it's okay, could we do the questions at the end? Because I'm on a tiny laptop monitor at the moment, and I can't see the chat very well and follow my slides at the same time. So if that's okay, I'd hold questions for the end. You can go ahead and type them in the chat, but as they come to you. And I'll address them at the end. So what is streaming? So basically streaming is, there's a lot of technicality behind it that we don't need to necessarily get into. It's really just a way to bring content to your TV or device over the internet, as opposed to by other means, which formerly was via antenna and then over cable. Different way to digitally access your content. And content is basically streamed to your TV or device as opposed to being downloaded. Okay, and that's a big deal, basically, because if you can imagine, if any of you know how big a video file can be, like something on your phone, for example, and you can imagine all of these TV shows and all of these movies, how big those files are. If we had to download all of those, it would take forever, first of all, and you wouldn't be able to store it all anywhere. So streaming allows us to view it as it plays, basically, without downloading it. I gotta move this out of the way so I can see. Okay, so cable and streaming, just for those of you who may want to understand some of the similarities and differences, because there are some similarities, and that's what makes it a little bit confusing. The similarities are that they both offer recorded content or programming, so movies and TV shows that are basically files somewhere stored on a server out in the cloud. And they also now both offer live programming. So in the past, cable was the only way to get live programming, but now there's live streaming. So now we have live streaming TV as well. So they're similar that way. They both are paid by subscription. So you pay a monthly subscription for them to access the content. There are a few free streaming services, Canopy being one of them, and then there are some that you can access from, like the LA Public Library, that technically aren't free. The county or the city paid for those licenses, but they're free to public library card holders. But basically they operate on a monthly subscription basis. And then many of the streaming TV services are now can be organized by channels, basically. So just like in your cable, where you turned it on and you had a guide and you clicked down through and found your channels, or maybe you had your favorites, there are streaming services now that are kind of like cable alternate streaming services offered by those same cable companies that are organized by channel, and you can view them by channel and see that same format and organization. But then there's also, as many of you know, a lot of streaming content that is on demand, and that's not organized by channel. And I'll get into that in a minute. There are many differences, but the principal ones, I think, for a getting started kind of a presentation are that how the digital media is delivered to your TV or your device. So there's, I don't even understand all the technicalities behind it, but it actually comes from your internet service provider. So your cable provider, basically, like Spectrum or Verizon or Frontier. It's sent in a different digital format when it's via cable versus when it's via streaming. And that difference means that you may need a different kind of TV, or if you don't need a different kind of TV, you need a device to interpret that different kind of digital format. And then also, because it's a different, delivered in a different way, you need a different connecting cable to connect your TV to the digital service. So those are just foundational differences. And when you're getting started or getting set up, those are the key things to remember. So one question I think a lot of people have is, do I need both, or can I cancel my cable if I have streaming? Yes, you can. They aren't one-to-one, although nowadays you can, for example, subscribe, let's say you have, I happen to have Spectrum as my service provider out here in the Valley. I long ago had cable, and I paid Spectrum to get cable channels. And then they told me that I could buy their streaming service, which would give me the same channels, but via streaming instead. And that they felt there were some advantages to that, and that could actually provide more content to me. So those are a one-to-one match. So I could cancel the cable contract and just pay the streaming contract to Spectrum. Alternatively, if you're not all that interested in watching a lot of channels, and I actually wasn't, so I actually ended up not keeping that alternate streaming service. I'm much more inclined to watch like a movie or series on Netflix or something like that. So in that case, you can also just have the Netflix and you don't need cable in that case either. So basically all you need to stream, if the streaming service you have gives you what you want to watch, is basically internet service. And where it gets a little bit confusing is we tend to call the internet service our cable company. And that's what we were known for. But nowadays, Spectrum, Frontier, and Verizon are our internet service providers. And you may see the letters ISP, and that's what ISP stands for. So they've transitioned into being primarily internet service providers. And that's critical for us now in this, pandemic age where we're all stuck at home, not just so that we can watch streaming service, but so we have connectivity to the internet. So the short answer is yes, you can cancel cable if you have streaming. You don't have to, and it won't necessarily be one-to-one. You have to kind of figure out what it is that you want to watch first. So why would I want to stream TV? I think the main one is that it means you can watch your shows anywhere you are. It basically just, if you go, when we can travel again and go visit our families and friends elsewhere, you can log into that streaming service on the television in the hotel where you're staying or wherever you may be staying, or on the device that you carry with you, and access your content that you have subscribed to wherever you are. You can't do that with cable. Cable is tied to the account based at your location, your physical location. I think that's the biggest reason that you want to consider moving to streaming. It can be cheaper, although not necessarily. If you end up subscribing to a lot of streaming services, that can add up. But on balance, as you start, I would say there's a slide later on that shows, I think the average cable bill is about $107 a month, and it ranges quite a bit, right? And a lot of the streaming services some start around $10 a month or $12 a month or so, and go up to $50 or $60 a month. So if you only have one or two of those, you've already saved a little money every month. Increasingly as well, more and more content is moving to streaming, and that includes live TV, which is relatively new. I'm not quite sure when it started, probably a couple of years ago. And the internet service providers themselves are really pushing people to go to streaming because I think they want to move off of the whole cable. They're kind of having to run both at the same time right now, and that's costly to them, and then therefore costly to us. So I think it's very likely that at some point before too long, we will only have streaming. We probably won't have cable very much longer. And then the other reason you might want to choose streaming TV is that you can choose from numerous streaming services. So you have a sense of a little more choice. You're still locked in a little bit to the packages that they have for each of their services. And Netflix doesn't have every movie, neither does Amazon Prime. Kind of figuring out which ones have which movies and which shows. Really, the best way to do that is talking to your friends and family and hearing referrals from people. And so that's where sometimes it's necessary to subscribe to a couple of them to make sure you get the ones that you want. But essentially, you get to pick and choose, and you can add and drop easily, right? No contracts, cancel anytime. And you can try things on a trial basis too, often for a month for free or sometimes longer, which is kind of nice. So this is where we start getting into places where it can get complicated. And I did my best to simplify down, but I want to start out by saying that streaming, the reason I didn't ask you each to go to your room where your television or your monitor is or your device is because everybody's device and internet service provider and subscription to a streaming service is different. And what year your television, you may have the same television as your neighbor, but it might be a different year. Those differences can matter in terms of how you connect. So what I decided to do is kind of stay rather general and give you a sense of basically what you need and help you understand maybe what you don't need, hopefully. And I hope I don't oversimplify too much. It was a balancing act. But basically, there's two fundamental things that you need for streaming. One is the subscription to the streaming service, at least one, right? Unless you're accessing a free service like Canopy or something like that. you don't actually have to pay anything. You just need an account. So with a subscription comes an account, right? Just like your email account. And then you need a device to stream to that accepts streaming media. So to subscribe to at least one streaming service, you have essentially 3 options now. And in terms of category types, you have innumerable options, but the different kind of 3 different buckets, if you will, of types of streaming services. And you can mix and match these. You can, these are agglutinative. They don't all have to be just either or, okay? So you've got the cable alternative services, which are the channel-based ones. So this is where you can pay Spectrum or Verizon or Frontier a monthly fee, and they will give you your channels basically with both pre-recorded and news and live programming via streaming service. And it essentially operates once you've got it set up, just like your cable does. I think the advantage there is it's simpler for them to deliver to the customer and more efficient. And as I mentioned, for them, if it becomes a cost saving, then hopefully they can pass that on to the customer. So I do think that they're going to be moving increasingly to customers to this form. If you want to stay channel based, this is what you want to look to. The ones that we all started with streaming with were Netflix, probably the original, right? Is called on demand. And so by that we mean, you can, back in the old days, and many of us, including myself, remember when you watched a show, it was on when it was on at a certain time, right? And some live programming is that way as well. Although increasingly they're also recording live programming so you can watch it later. Nowadays, with things like Netflix and Amazon Prime and these others, Hulu or Disney Plus, these are kind of the most used ones. These on-demand services, you can search for a show or a documentary or a movie, even some recorded content that was originally live and is now archived. You can search for that and pull it up at any time of day, whenever you want to watch it, and then play it on your device. And then the last one is, and the latest entry is live streaming, which is basically live TV over the internet. So in some ways, what we're doing right now, Zoom is kind of like that idea, or watching the basketball game last night. There are streaming services such as Fubo TV, which has a lot of sports channels, where you could, even if that was on a paid network that you would normally have to pay extra for, through Fubo TV, you could access that game live streaming and watch it live. And you can also, with those services, often pay $5 extra a month or so to record them, kind of like the DVR equivalent in cable. So digital video recorder. They have that equivalent in the live streaming nowadays as well. So that's kind of nice if you are going to miss the big game and you want to come and watch it later in the day, you can do that. So the second thing, so the first thing you needed was a subscription to at least one streaming service, right? And the second thing you need is a device to stream to, obviously, right? Most of us think of that as being our TV, some sort of form of TV. Well, which device? I basically feel like the first decision you need to make, and we don't want to assume that it always is the case that we all want to watch on a big screen. Some people prefer actually to watch on a smaller kind of personal screen. But that's the first question. Do you want to watch on a TV screen, like a large monitor? Or are you okay just watching on a smaller screen? You can do both, of course. If you want to watch on a large TV screen, there are 2 primary ways to do that. And this is boiling things down. This is definitely simplifying. There are a lot of other alternative approaches to doing this, but they get a little complicated, and they take a little trial and error usually. So the 2, starting with the simplest basically, and the 2 most common, are to connect to a smart TV, what's known as a smart TV. And with that, you need an HDMI cable. And that's a kind of cable that has a certain kind of end on it that plugs into the back of the smart TV and plugs into your internet modem. Or you can use I guess what I'll call a regular TV that's not smart. And I'll explain smart TV in just a moment. But a regular TV that has an HDMI port, and then you have to add to that a streaming media player. And then you also need the HDMI cable. And then we can get into complications with the cables. I mean, if anyone knows cables, I mean, dealing with cables on your phone, it's constantly changing and which plug you use and need, constantly having to swap them out. Same with televisions, they're not all standard, and the older ones can connect to the newer devices. You just have to get adapters for those. But that gets very specific to the situation, so I didn't want to get too complicated. So basically, to watch on a larger TV screen, you need either a smart TV or a so-called regular TV, to which you add a streaming media player. And both of those need a cable to connect to your internet. With regard to watching on a smaller screen, so if you're okay with that, streaming has made it possible to watch on more than just a TV. And that's the other really nice thing about it, because it doesn't download, right? So even if you had a smart TV with a giant hard drive that could download all this stuff, you would never be able to do that on a laptop, on a laptop or a mobile phone or a tablet or even a game console. But you can now. You just need an app installed on your Mac PC, your game console, or your tablet or mobile phone. So you can install like the Netflix app or the Amazon Prime app or the Hulu app, and connect, as long as you're connected to the internet and you log into your subscription to that service, you can watch and play it right on that little personal screen. So, and as you know, many people are now doing that on airlines, and I think increasingly that's actually what they're delivering as well, is streaming media on those airline consoles. So same idea here. And it's very, very simple. So there's no hardware to deal with on this, which is really nice with watching on the smaller screen. And you can take it wherever you go, which is really nice. So coming back to the TV, the big screen, which is kind of the, what everybody wants to be able to do in their homes for the most part, right? So what is a smart TV actually? What's smart about it? Well, basically it's a large monitor or a large screen. Nowadays we call them monitors. That has basically a built-in computer that you can't see because it's very compact, and it's kind of built into the form factor of the monitor, right? So the monitors are all they're very horizontally oriented, very thin. They're getting increasingly thinner and somewhat more lightweight, although they're also getting bigger, so you don't really gain too much on the weight. But unbelievably, they've got computer chip in there. It's basically a little computer. And that built-in computer has an operating system on it, just like your Mac or your PC does. And so because it has an operating system and it's like a little computer, that's what makes it smart. It's the computer that makes it smart, right? And that smart TV has pre-installed applications or apps to connect to Netflix and Hulu and what have you, right? And you can also install additional one. So if it doesn't come pre-installed with something that's sort of a little off the mainstream, you can install additional ones, just like you would install an application on your computer or on your phone for that matter. So that's what makes it a smart TV. Do you need a smart TV to stream? No, you don't. It is simpler though. It's probably a little more costly because it's smart. Although the prices are coming down rapidly. It's amazing how much more you get for your money now than a year ago even. But it does offer a simpler setup, and it's just more ready to go because you don't have to add this additional streaming media device into the mix, right? So a simpler setup for those of you who get really easily frustrated by having to connect multiple things together, or if you want fewer wires or cables. And also diagnosing outages and when things aren't working. It does make it a little bit simpler because it's all kind of built in. So you just connect the smart TV to the internet with your cable and you log into your streaming service and you're off and running. So do you need it? No, there's another way to do it. So to watch on a large screen TV, we think of, there are two, as I said earlier, so I'm replaying the slide here. There are the two primary ways to do it, and there are multiple other ways too. The smart TV plus HDMI cable is pretty straightforward, I think, conceptually. It's just, buy the TV, run it, configure it, get it up and running, plug the HDMI cable into your internet connection at home or wherever you are, and then log into each of your streaming accounts, and you're off and running. The other way is with the regular TV and the streaming media player. And this is where additional choices come in. So for starters, what is a streaming media player? And there's people call these different things, kind of streaming TV devices, and sometimes they go by the name of the actual company that has made it, like Fire Stick or Apple TV. Those are all streaming media players. And so here, basically what it is because you need this for a TV that isn't smart, right? It doesn't have a computer built into the TV. You need to add a computer to be able to stream, right? So it's basically a small computer device that makes your TV smart enough to connect to the internet and allows you to install those apps to access your streaming services. So they all come with at least one pre-installed streaming application. Most of them come with more. Amazon Fire TV devices are, of course, privileging the Amazon access and the Amazon Prime content, but you can install other streaming applications on an Amazon Fire TV device. There's also other ones, like Roku is the other big one. Oops, sorry. I have a Roku. I actually got a Roku on a promotion from something. I don't even remember what. So I got it for free, probably 5 or 6 years ago, and it's still working just fine. Very easy to operate, and it came pre-installed with a few of the main streaming service apps that I needed to use. Another one are in the Apple ecosystem, and there are others as well. There's Chromecast and others like that. So if you're working with a TV that's not smart and you are going to use a streaming media device, how do you choose? Or how do you even choose between the two? Like, how do you decide whether you maybe should go buy a smart TV or not? Fundamentally, you really can't go wrong. It starts to become a matter of kind of thinking about how you feel about technology and dealing with it. I mean, nobody likes to deal with problems, right? But if you have a little bit of patience and you're willing to work with an existing TV, and maybe you don't want to spend that money on a brand new one, and you're willing to deal with the hardware, then it's not that hard to add a streaming device. It's just one additional piece and an additional cable. So you really can't go wrong either way. But if you don't like dealing with hardware and cables, I would definitely recommend going with a smart TV. And also, when it comes time to troubleshooting, it can be a little bit simpler to do. One thing to note is that not all smart TVs work with all streaming services. And you really need to Google the model of your TV to find out what it works with, or ask the people who sold you the TV. And so it's a good thing to ask at the time of purchase or when you're shopping. The reason that not all smart TVs work with all streaming services, they pretty much all work with the main ones, but they're basically just like a computer, and not all computers work with all possible applications, right? There's some applications you can't run on your Mac or your PC for whatever reason, because the operating system wasn't coded that way. Same with the smart TV. The computer in the smart TV isn't coded to work with everything, right? Typically, this is really just kind of the more marginal kinds of streaming services, but it's just good to know. And so sometimes if you find that you can't run something, that it may just be that your smart TV wasn't programmed to do that. Generally speaking, for choosing between the streaming media devices, the big ones being the Amazon Fire and the Roku. The Amazon Fire is really good for those of you who are primarily watching Amazon Prime content. or are Amazon Echo owners, because you can actually control the TV through the Amazon Echo with voice commands. This can be beneficial to people with disabilities as well. But Amazon Fire TV devices are a little bit more challenging to install additional streaming apps onto. You can do it. It's just not quite as kind of easy as it is with the Roku. The Roku is really good for people who want to access multiple streaming services. And I also read somewhere that it's also, for some reason, particularly good for streaming 4K video. So 4K is very high definition. So if you're really interested in 4K, that would be the better way to go. Again, this is just if you don't have a smart TV though. So how many streaming services do you need? It really depends on what content you want to watch. And sometimes we don't know until we've seen it, right? So many people will subscribe to streaming services to explore it for a while and then decide they don't use it and unsubscribe, right? And that's the nice thing about streaming, is it's a month to month. No contracts there. So if you already know that, you pretty much, like I did, my husband and I, we just watch a few shows here and there, and once in a while a movie. We really don't watch television, so I never signed up for channel-based kind of new. I don't have time. I don't make time to watch the news and such. I knew I just wanted to access primarily Netflix, and there's an international streaming services with international content for movies and shows that we wanted to try. So sometimes you may just need one. And the only problem there is that you don't necessarily get all of the movies or all of the TV shows that are available in the world, right? With one streaming service. But if one service has all that you want, you just need that one. So it really depends on thinking through what you want to watch, or trying it out and seeing what you actually access and what you don't. As far as costs go, again, this is generalizing ranges here, but basically the on-demand services like Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu and those are around to $15 for a single streaming service. There's a lot of bundles and packages that are more than that, which if you actually watch all that content, they're worth it. Sometimes it's kind of a gimmick to get you to pay more per month and you don't actually end up watching it. But that's a practice that we were all familiar with the cable approach to things as well. So on demand, $10 to $15 a month. Live streaming averages around $50 to $60 a month. So live streaming through YouTube TV, Fubo TV, Sling TV, and Hulu offers a live streaming called Hulu Plus. So those you pay more for, but there you get access to live, like sports and news, and as well as some recorded content. So it gives you a little bit of both. By comparison, the average cable bill is about $107 a month. That's just an average, right? So some of us pay less, some of us pay a lot more. But the other thing to note is that many offer free trials for streaming service. So you can try for a month. I think I got Sling once for 3 months. And sometimes you can actually sign up with a different email account and get a second free month if you're not really sure yet. So and on and off. Sometimes they offer, if you unsubscribe and then they offer another free trial again, you can go back on and they'll let you. So that's a nice way to kind of explore things if you're not sure if you want it. And then, as I mentioned, a lot of, like, as was true and as is true with the cable services, there's a lot of promotions and bundles to kind of get you to add on additional services, or subscribe for a year and pay up front and you get a lower rate, or that kind of thing, right? And then also, as I've mentioned, there is some quote unquote free content, particularly available to us through the LA Public Library. And that's probably true in a lot of the major metropolitan areas. I don't know so much about out in the lesser populated areas. And those are subscribed to by the government entities and with our taxpayer dollars, essentially, right, to enable people to access TV and television and movie content to some extent, right? Not all the same library of content as you might access on Netflix or others, but still offering some nice content there. So it basically ranges from free or a version of free all the way up to 50 to 60 a month. And then if you subscribe to multiple, of course, that is cumulative. So I found this and I thought, and I put the link down the bottom if you wanted to go check it out later. Many of us are interested also in foreign and international content, when these are some of the sort of less known services out there, but offer some really wonderful content that you don't find on the big ones. And these are listed actually in I don't know who rated these, but Acorn is number 10 down to Megahertz Choice, which was the #1 for foreign and international content. And you can see some prices here as well. And you note that the third one here, Canopy, is free. I guess it's always free, Canopy. And that one also is available through the library as well. So you can see kind of a range here, and note the fifth one, eTV Net, which is probably live streaming. I haven't gone on it, but it's probably live streaming of foreign television or international television, a little bit higher per month because you're getting that live streaming benefit, right? And I hear really good things about Crunchyroll. I don't know why people like it, but I think that's a hilarious title or name. So that just gives you a sense of some of the costs. All right, so when I was sitting thinking, what would people want to know about getting started? So for those of you who are already going, this may not be all that helpful, but if you're just kind of figuring out how to get started, I would say start simple and start with one service and try it out. Particularly if you have a recommendation from friends and family for a show, or there's certain channels that news or programming that you really can't live without in your cable, and you want to try streaming. That's the other way. Basically figure out what channels you like and what shows you want to watch. So it's really, it becomes more about you, not what the company is delivering, and you just get to pick and choose from that. You can actually sit and figure out what is it that I really want to watch. And then you can go to those streaming providers' web pages and see what they offer. And then of course you can also talk to friends and family and say, they can tell you, oh, this is on both Netflix and Prime, or this is on Hulu only, or this is on Disney Plus, or whatever it might be. And the nice thing too is you can start with one, and maybe that was great, but you want to add one, or maybe you didn't like that first one, and your friends tell you, this other service has these other wonderful programs, and you can drop it and go to the next one. So it's very simple to do in terms of subscribing. It's just basically creating an account. And in that case, the hardest thing is probably actually remembering your password for all of these things. So, but I would recommend starting simple and building out, right? Adding on as you needed. Or if you can get a good bundle to try like 2 or 3 different ones. I think at one point they had Disney Plus and ESPN and I forget what else, something else bundled. And it was a pretty good price for the 3 together. But I ended up not watching really any of it. And the ESPN really only had like 2 ESPN channels, and there wasn't any other sport channels on it. So it really wasn't worth it to me. So I dropped it. But, I spent about a month's worth on it. It wasn't too bad. So this is really, you can't go wrong. And then some gotchas. I'm sure you all have your own to share by now. But just some things that you may not be aware of and worth keeping in mind. As I mentioned, the operating system in these smart TVs. So this is with regard to the smart TVs. They have different operating systems in them. They're produced by different companies, manufactured by different companies, and they're not all the same. So they don't always work with every streaming service. And I don't know that they necessarily, it's probably in the fine print that they publish these things, or you can pretty much Google anything these days, and the World Wide Web will tell you if people have had experience like you're having trouble accessing a particular service from a particular TV. So, having access to the model of the TV that you have, and maybe even the serial number, So you can easily Google that and say, I'm having trouble accessing. Is this a problem on this particular one? And if you can confirm that, yes, that one doesn't work with that service, or you need to reach out to the company and get them to help you kind of do a firmware update, and they can help you install some additional application in there to access the other service. But just basically to know that they don't all have the exact same system, and they don't work with every single streaming service. Another one is if your internet is out, you can't access streamed content. There are some add-ons for streamed content where you can download and watch offline, but that's actually a download. So you have to watch out for that too, because that takes up a lot of space, right? A lot of file space. But essentially you are tied to the internet with streaming. So for those of you who might want to be connected even when the internet is out, a friend of mine actually recommended what she's done is connect actually a physical antenna, the old-fashioned antenna, to your television. And you can still receive free local channels apparently in the LA area, depending on, I don't know how the reception will be. It probably will vary based on where you are. But that would be the only way you could access, news channels during an emergency if the internet is out. Smart TVs are computers connected to the internet, right? That's what makes them smart. So that means that they have some potential security risks, just like any computer does. They do have programming built into them to protect them from malware, viruses and the like. But basically, it's a good idea to keep your smart TV up to date. So if you have a smart TV and it messages you, prompts you with a little message and says an update is ready, it's a good idea, just like on your phone or your computer, to keep it up to date, because that's typically to protect you from malware that would access the computer basically on your smart TV, just like it could access your other computer and get access to your network and possibly get access to accounts, account information and the like. I haven't heard of this happening to anyone, but it's just something to be aware of, because it is a computer after all, and it is connected to the public internet, right? And then the other thing, this isn't really a got you, but it can be if you're outside of the United States. So hopefully we'll all be able to travel again soon. And for those of us who leave the country to visit or to live for a time, some streaming content will play in a foreign country, assuming you have an internet connection. But many of them don't. And most of them have not exactly the same content. So maybe not all your shows or all of your movies will be available to you through Netflix or Prime, for example, when you're outside of the US. So that would be something you might want to look into if that's something that you do frequently and want to depend on. There may be some of the more foreign or international content services that might actually work more reliably and more consistently when you're outside of the US, and that's easy enough to find online. I think that was it. Yeah, so that was it. How am I doing on time? All right, we've got 15 minutes. I'm gonna stop sharing, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. So let's see, what's the best way, Maria and Aisha? Let's see, chat.
There are some questions in the chat, so we can do the chat questions first.
Okay.
And then if people have questions, I'll let people unmute. So one question is, with screen mirroring off an iPad, could you stream to a dumb monitor without a TV receiver? I don't know what that even means.
Yeah. Yes. So this is a person who's already well along in streaming. So yes, this was it. I debated whether to add this. It just seemed like it was a little complicated for those who are new to this. But basically, if you can imagine your phone or your tablet, all you have to do to play Netflix is actually install the Netflix app and log into Netflix, and you're off and running. So if that's the case, and you have a so-called dumb TV, it's not smart, and you don't have a streaming media device, you can do something called mirroring. So basically, replicating what you see on your phone or your iPad onto the television screen. Not all televisions do this, but many of them do. And in that case, you need to either do it over a cable, so physically connecting your iPad or your tablet or phone to the television with a cable, or in some cases you can do it over the wireless internet, Wi-Fi. And that also depends on what kind of television that you have. A lot of televisions are Wi-Fi enabled. So the short answer to that question is yes, you can stream to a dumb monitor with screen mirroring. And if you want to write that down, screen mirroring, it's just like it sounds like it is, but how you make it work for your particular TV would depend on that device, right?
Yeah, my 5-year-old figured out how to screen mirror from her iPad. So
Yeah.
It's okay. Do you need an HDMI cable if you have Wi-Fi internet?
It depends, I guess. So if your television has is Wi-Fi enabled, which would mean that it was a smart TV, then you do not need an HDMI cable. You can you need to connect, however, to, I'm sorry, you can connect. Okay, let me backtrack. You need an HDMI cable to connect from the modem, your cable connection, or the port in the wall. I'm sorry, the connection point for your internet service provider in the wall, to the either to the television, or if you wanted to connect with Wi-Fi, to the router that gives you the Wi-Fi in your house, right? So that connection from the wall, from the internet service provider outside into your house, has to either be connected to the television with HDMI or to your Wi-Fi router. But in that case, then you wouldn't need a cable from the TV to your to your device to be able to stream.
Okay, the next question is, we have a smart TV and a Roku device. Do we need both?
A smart TV and a Roku device. You don't need both. I have the same thing though, because I had the Roku before we got the TV, and they work compatibly. So there's a little bit of overlap, and there probably would be in most cases. The smart TV that we have, for example, came pre-installed with, I think, Netflix and Prime and Hulu and Vudu and one or two others. And the Roku also came pre-installed with a couple of those. But I found it easier to install, like Disney, for example, or ESPN. I found it easier to install those on the Roku than install them on my smart TV. Just the interface was easier. So basically you can have both, but you don't need the Roku if you've got the smart TV.
Yeah, I will say I have an older model TV in my bedroom, which has an Apple TV. And also the Roku's in another bedroom, because smart TVs are kind of a newer thing. So unless you have a relatively new TV and it's got the Wi-Fi in there, you probably would need the extra device.
You would.
Okay, so have you tried Canopy and any issues with this service?
So I've only accessed, personally speaking, my experience with Canopy is only over my laptop. I haven't tried it through my television. It worked just fine on the laptop. I basically just had to log into I accessed it through the library, so through my library card account, and it worked just fine. I was able to stream it just fine on my laptop, but I haven't heard of issues with it, but it doesn't mean there aren't any. If someone, I guess by this question, I would suspect someone has had issues. It could be any number of things, but maybe to start is depending on how you were accessing the service, whether it was through the library or just directly to Canopy, you might check what whether your television or your streaming device works with Canopy or not. Because again, like I said a few times before, they're computers and they don't work with all of the services. So some of the older ones in particular, and by old, I mean only a few years, sometimes may not be compatible. And there's a way to correct that, which is to install something additional on it to make it work.
Okay. How do I connect my computer to my smart TV?
Your computer.
I mean, I think unless you have a HDMI cord.
Yeah. Again, this depends on what kind of computer and what kind of ports,
Could I clarify my question?
Sure, you can.
Okay, I know you could, what I would like to be able to do is there's something on the computer, and aren't you able to, through the internet, have it come out on your TV?
Yes. You may or may not need a cable for that. You may be able to do that with screen mirroring, which is what we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. So depending on what kind of computer you have, do you have a Mac or a PC?
I have a PC.
Okay. I'm not as familiar with how to screen mirror from the PC. I know for sure you can though. And I probably shouldn't take too much time specific to your setup, but either consult with someone who can help you with screen mirroring, or just Google it and see if you can find, there's a billion wonderful, simple YouTube videos or just sets of instructions on how to do that. And it would be screen mirroring specific to your computer. So you need to know what model computer that is. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. For very, when you go to your settings, you'll see something about display, and that's kind of where you would find the screen mirroring or casting, something like that, Judith. Let's see. The next one is, if your modem is in another room, how do you connect to smart TV?
Well, either if you need to have a wireless router connected to your modem, and then that will send the streaming signal wirelessly to the smart TV in the other room, or you have to actually have the smart TV in a close enough to the modem to be able to connect them with a cable. Those are your two options.
I'm muted. Okay, here we go. Let's see. If you have an older smart TV, how do you add Disney Plus or Canopy to watch it on TV and not a mobile device?
Well, there's a way. Okay, older smart TV, that could be the signal that maybe it has some limitations.
Mm-hmm.
But smart TVs should allow you to install additional streaming service provider applications or apps onto them. And so you'd have to look up how to install additional streaming service. You could probably just something simple like Google something simple like how to add Disney Plus to my Samsung blah blah model, whatever, right? If it's an older Samsung. And you should be able to pull up instructions for that. But it does require using the remote or whatever controls you have for the smart TV to walk through the steps of adding those services intentionally, right? You have to pull it down, and it actually pulls the application down from the internet, just like your computer does.
Yeah, just like your phone, there should be an app store, an app icon. You just you download it there. Okay, the other we have about 5 minutes more, so I don't want to take more of your time, Annelie. And I know I'm saying that wrong. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Someone said that they're subscribed to Disney Plus or Discovery Plus. So I'm not quite sure that question.
Let me clarify that if I can.
Sure.
We subscribe to Discovery Plus because there's a lot of shows that have gone on there, like Fixer Upper and Property Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you know when a new show is on in something like Discovery Plus? And also, what we have to do is we have to connect our iPad to our smartphone in order to our smart TV in order to see it. Do you know anything about Discovery Plus, or can you clarify anything there?
I don't have experience with Discovery Plus myself. So no, I don't have specific knowledge of that service. In general, the first question about how do you know when you ask how do you know when there's new content basically available? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
Well, typically they advertise it when you open it up, like when you turn on your app. I guess you're using an iPad. when you turn it on and you connect it to your TV, the opening screen usually shows, newly added or something like that. There should be, if they don't do that, there should be a way to search on new content or just browse and scroll through and see the content and see what's new. But I'd be surprised if they're not sort of advertising, kind of pushing advertisement of the new stuff. The second question was about you're not able to access it directly from your smart TV. Is that what you're saying? You have to use your iPad?
Yeah, we have to go through the iPad.
Yeah, that could be, I'm afraid I don't know what that would be other than it could, yeah. It's really hard to say. It could just be that something else needs to be installed on your smart TV, or it just won't work on that particular version of your TV, depending on how old it is.
The Discovery said it had to be from some kind of a device like a iPhone or an iPad or something. So that means you have to disconnect everything and go to your device.
The other approach you could maybe take is to get like a Roku. They're not terribly expensive,
Yeah.
and connect that to your TV, and that might enable you to more readily connect to things like Discovery Plus.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm curious if you have, because if you can like a screencast to your TV might be a smart TV because you need the internet to do that casting. So if you maybe go to your settings on your TV and do like a software update to see if that helps, as far as because if they're connecting to your iPad or your iPhone to the TV, then the TV obviously has Wi-Fi. So you should be able to just watch it from the TV. So I would suggest that also. And then on Discovery Plus, when you add something to your watch list, because I'm an HGTV junkie myself, when you add a series to your watch list, as they upload new shows, it'll pop up in your queue because you have that checked as your favorite show. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, I don't want to take too much time, but if you have, we can take a couple more questions. But just to let everyone know, we also have another program coming up on April 12th about being more mindfulness. I know with Zoom and Zoom fatigue and everything going on with the news and the media, it can be hard to take time for yourself. So just be on the lookout for a mindfulness program that we are doing. It's April 12th at 10 a.m. And you'll see more information about that in the newsletter. So if you have other questions, feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. We'll do, let's say, 5 more questions before we wrap it up. And maybe we'll have a session 2, a part 2 to streaming or something, because it really is a lot to take in.
Yeah, it is a lot to take in, absolutely. We could get more into some of the streaming services we could talk about and stuff.
There's so many streaming services. Yeah. There's just too much. Any other questions?
Just to clarify, you'd answered my question earlier about having a smart TV and a Roku device. That's exactly your situation is exactly the same one we had. We bought a new smart TV and had the Roku device from the previous one. And the new Samsung has a much better interface, but I agree with you that Roku, I think, is easier to use as far as adding streaming apps. So
I sort of feel like it just has one thing to do and it does it well. That's kind of how I think about it.
Okay.
And just keep being mindful too, because I had the same experience with some of these streaming services have, I guess, contracts with certain devices. Because I think at one point I had my Fire Stick connected to my TV, but I couldn't get HBO at the time, HBO Go, because there was a conflict with whatever contract, and they did not want HBO to talk to the Fire Stick people because that's an Amazon product. But so depending on your device, I found better luck with having a smart TV that I got myself for Black Friday last year, and it just has everything there. So then between that and Apple TV, you kind of have to see what works in your space. But a smart TV really, it is what it is. It has everything built in, so I could just take out my HDMI that I had plugged in. I could take out my Fire Stick, and I could take out my DVD player, which I still kind of use. But just kind of see what streaming services you want and make sure it's compatible with your TV. Any more questions? Should we just talk about favorite shows now, or?
I actually have to go to another meeting, sadly. So
If we don't have any
I'm
other
going to have to
questions-
duck out. But yeah, any
Sure.
other questions?
One last question, Maria. You have a question? Go ahead before we wrap this up.
No, I don't have a question. I just
No,
wanted to
it's a-
tell
it's a
Annelie,
Maria.
thank you so much. That was excellent.
Oh, you're
Really
welcome.
appreciate it. Yeah,
Yeah, no
very
problem.
informative.
It was
I
fun
think
to
we
put
had
it together.
a different Maria had a hand up. Maria
Oh.
Uglade.
Sorry.
It's okay. Maria? Okay. Well, thank you so much. Sorry to take your time. If you have any other questions, feel free to email us and we can try to help answer your question, and maybe we can have another session down the line.
Sure.
Hopefully you got all your streaming questions answered, and have a great afternoon.
One quick question, Maria, will the pet therapy, was that recorded and can I access it?
Yes, it was recorded. And I believe Aisha will be sharing the information of how to access it, or if you just go to our YouTube, you should be able to access it. Aisha, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, just give me to the end of today or tomorrow to upload to YouTube.
Great, thank you.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see you
Bye-bye.
guys.
Thank you, everyone. Great
Thanks,
audience. Thank you.
Annalisa. Okay.